Hello and welcome to the next 100 Days podcast. My name is Graham Arrowsmith.
And my name's Kevin Appleby. So, Graham, we've been searching around for guests, and I was looking across in Chicago, and I found a guy smoking weed. So I thought I'd ask him on the show.
Well, it's got to that, isn't it, Kevin? It's like we're really anything. This guy has got more credibility than most when it comes to podcasting. It's Pat Helmers. Welcome, Pat, to the next 100 Days podcast.
It is such an honor to be here.
Well, we know that anyway. No, we really do. No, we're not kidding. Seriously, Pat, you're like a legend. You've run Sales Babble podcast. It's been going for about 50 years, apparently, hasn't it? It's something like that.
It has been a long time. Oh my goodness! In March it'll be 8 years.
Wow.
8 years. Wow. Yeah.
And that's a bit like us. It's one a week.
It's once a week. Yeah. I think I have missed maybe one in 7+ years.
Wow, that's
long.
Yep. Yeah, that's
consistent. It is every Tuesday, 3 a.m. on the dot. The vast majority of them, they come out on Tuesdays, and I don't miss.
Wow.
Yeah. That's the way to do it. I mean, this is a bit like us, Graham. I can remember those days when we didn't have a guest, and we've been sitting there at 2:45 on a Thursday afternoon saying to each other, what are we going to talk about today? And
don't give our secrets away, Kevin. Crikey. I mean, this is all really polished. Anybody listening to this won't agree with you because we're so good at. Actually, we've just done a little reel that we released early this week of some recent guests.
That was nice. I saw that.
You saw that? Oh, it's. Do you know what? One of the things that I really liked about what they said is that we were asking good questions, and I couldn't work out whether that was me or Kevin. Because it has to be one of us. But
has
actually,
to be Graham. Has to.
Yeah, it's probably you, Kevin. But the point is, they were so nice, so gracious.
Yeah,
they were gracious. That was my takeaway. Yeah,
and most of them were American, actually, believe it or not. So. I think they were.
Despite what people think, some Americans are actually quite nice.
No, you know what? My experience is most Americans are nice. It's just
Yes.
I am completely against one set of them, but that's another story. But we won't go into that. We probably upset you. But then again, you live in Chicago, so are your windows rolled up? Are you safe?
It's I'm actually 55. Chicago's a lovely city. I don't know if you've been here before. Anyone who's ever visited that I've met and said I'm from Chicago, they're like, "Oh, I love Chicago." People who've actually been here find it it's a lovely city. It sits on Lake Michigan, which actually looks like the ocean. It's so big. The lake is so big, and the architecture is stunning downtown. It's got broad streets. There's a calmness to it. And it's
definitely on my bucket list.
Very breezy. Right now, I'm seeing 20-mile-an-hour winds outside. It's quite.
I have. I have to admit that I actually have been to Chicago, but only through the O'Hare airport. So basically, I've kind of dropped in and then dropped out. So I didn't actually get a chance to go into the city.
It's not a great airport. It is.
No, I know, but it's you don't get the choice. We're landing here. All right, fair enough. Rather than not land. But
on my bucket list.
Oh, Graham, next time you're in town, you have to stop by.
Yeah,
we have to go out or something. Next time you're in town.
The thing is that there's so much crime there that would worry me. I'll be honest with you, and and it probably isn't like that everywhere. It's just that it's the perception.
It's just it is. They says, but then again, they say perception is the truth, right?
If it stops people coming, for sure. But I mean, I kind of agree. I mean, the thing is, I have seen pictures of downtown, etc., and it does look spectacular. There's no question. It's got to be one of the best cities in the world. But the truth is that there's I think it could do more because it's got great people, but I'm not sure you're being greatly led. But that's another story.
Well, I don't think. People will say that, and people talk about Illinois politics and. In Chicago politics is all there's a fair amount of cronyism and bribery and stuff like that, and that goes back a century. Right? That's. With that said, though, unlike other cities in the United States, Chicago has an unbelievable diverse set of industries.
Right.
You can get a job in practically any industry in Chicago. There's lots of jobs, which is why actually Chicago still steals business from the states around us, Wisconsin, Indiana. Now, Wisconsin, Indiana will say, you need to come here. We have less taxes. We have less crime. We have, the skies are bluer and all kinds of things. But the reality is that so some good examples are like Boeing moved in Chicago 10 years ago. Caterpillar Tractor just moved all their executives up into Chicagoland because there's a ton of opportunity. And to be honest, that's why I live here. I'm not from here. I'm from Central Illinois, and I came here because I had a great opportunity to work for AT&T Bell Laboratories, and I've stayed. Why have I stayed? Because there's other opportunities have been here. I mean, a lot of people talk about moving to Denver or Austin or places like that, but the reality is there are tons of, and also too, it's central to the Midwest. So if you have family here in the Midwest, and you don't want to have a long drive to go see them for the holidays.
Yeah, sure.
Chicago's great. There's a lot of people here from Wisconsin, a lot of people from Indiana, a lot of people from Iowa. It's like,
I have to say I do love the Americans. I think we're very, very similar as people, and I think. Then again, more similar than most people would accept.
Oh, you wouldn't believe.
Why is it? Why is it when Americans make films, the Brit is always the bad guy? The bad guy is always has a British accent. You think, I'm watching this film. I bet I know who the bad guy is. It's the Brit, and I don't know why it is, but they might think we're rogues.
I think that's is that true? America has a weird association with British. They love the British accent. Women just fawn over the British accent here in America. Yeah. I've talked to some guys here in the UK, and they said it's just so easy to connect with women with this. And I knew a guy who had a fake English accent, and he had worked on it. He was in theater, and he sounded quite authentic. Otherwise, America has this weird relationship with your royalty. And they're just
the ones that you've just adopted down in Los Angeles. You can keep them, but no, the majority of us have fallen out of love with them. Not
in America. I know that's true in the UK.
Oh, I know that, and I know that they seem to have an audience there.
Why you guys keep those people on the doles beyond me? But your house. You do what you want.
No, but the thing about you, Pat, is that you've recently pivoted from one industry to another. Kevin was telling me about this a little while ago. Kevin.
Yeah. So what's all about this, Pat? You going from being a man who talks about sales for non-salespeople to a man who's really trying to make a mark in the cannabis business. Now that sounds like a big change, Pat.
It is a big change. I feel very passionately about the cannabis industry. I feel like I believe the plant has been much aligned for nefarious reasons. And it actually has it's made a great contribution to humanity. It's been cultivated for maybe 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 years, a long time, from the Hindu Kush Mountains in Afghanistan and Pakistan and northern India, all the way down to the sativas in Thailand and Laos, Cambodia. These have been around a long time, but they became much aligned in the 30s and in the 80s. And it's time to right these because this plant can contribute to humanity. It can make a big difference. It's something I've been very interested in for a number of years, but trying to figure out how to get into the industry, have finally struck upon it. And if you want me, we can chat about what that's like. But
I actually think there can't be that many podcasts about the cannabis industry.
Oh, there's quite a few.
Okay, but there might be a few, but they'll probably peter out after about 6 episodes. But you'll be there after, but they'll be sort of prizing you away from the microphone. At the end of the day, you'll make that your own turf, won't you?
Yeah, and I'm using the podcast as a mechanism for networking.
Yeah.
Because my goal is to be a matchmaker and to promote and be an advocate for the industry. And the common challenges that business owners have in this industry, because cannabis in America is unique in that it's federally illegal, but the states have slowly been legalizing it.
Mm.
But what that means is there's still lots of limits in products crossing state borders. There's problems with banking and borrowing and investing, and insurance and hiring and HR issues. There's lots of challenges that businesses have in that space. So having a podcast that advocates for those people and the common concerns and challenges that they have, that's the podcast that's the podcast I wanted to create.
It's certainly going to
my goal is just to matchmake people. My goal is just to meet people and to get to know them, understand what their problems are, how they can help others, and problems where they want to be helped. And then over time, just slowly kind of matching people up. So I don't care if I don't have a big audience. I don't care if a lot of people don't listen to it, although it's been fun looking at the metrics, and my metrics have been going up. And that's kind of cool.
Yeah, and
it's
different from other
podcasts I've done. Sorry, what?
There's an interesting thing in there that if you have a podcast that is going into a deep, deep niche, or niche, as you Americans like to call it, that actually, because you're talking so directly to a very small group, your audience for a podcast can actually be higher. It's a weird dichotomy.
It's not about
sales
quantity,
Babble, you're talking
about quality.
Yeah. Sales Babble, you're talking to everybody about sales.
It isn't about
cannabis. Is very specific.
It's about commitment. These people are committed because they're interested in it, and are committed in the sense that they're curious about all the things that you're going to be talking about, and that will get them to tune in. And I think it's a very smart thing to do because it's an emerging industry. It's almost like not quite coming out of prohibition, but it's getting there. And I'll be honest with you, I'm worried because I'm not sure it's all one-way traffic, Pat. I've never used it. I know people advocate because of medical treatment, etc. And frankly, I'm all for taking away people's pain. But it's the recreational gateway to higher drugs that I worry about. Drugs that, and I don't know whether that's true, but I've heard people say that it is.
It's not true. It was created for a reason. A lot of people don't know the history behind how cannabis became illegal. Washington was a grower of hemp. Hemp was brought to the United States many, many years ago, and it's been used as a medicinal product and as a product for making rope, right? Which was very, but when the prohibition on alcohol was repealed in the United States, there were a lot of government workers that didn't have jobs anymore. Right. So they looked around and they said, well, how can we create a job? And they realized that there were a lot of Mexicans in the United States who were smoking cannabis because they brought it up here. And there were a lot of jazz musicians who were black who were smoking it. And they thought, and this is classic racism of America. And I don't mean to pick more on America because it's common all over the world. but they said, look, if we make this illegal, we can, it'll give us jobs. So they actually changed the word from cannabis to marijuana, which was the Spanish usage of it. They passed it through Congress late in the 30s. Congress didn't even know this because there was congressmen who actually had big hemp fields in their districts. They didn't know what they passed until like 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago that this stuff slowly became illegal. And it was illegal for a long time. What really hurt America was in the 80s, Nancy Reagan had this big war on drugs thing. This whole thing that you said, Graham, like it's a gateway drug, that all got invented then. And even though there's no research behind that whatsoever. And if you've ever met anybody who smoked a lot of pot, you would realize that's not who they are. That's not what that's about. And that was really terrible for America because a lot of people were incarcerated marijuana was used as a reason for arresting people for other stuff in hopes that they would find something.
Yeah.
And that was a mess. But sometimes, even though it's kind of like the stock market, companies can lie and lie and lie, but eventually people who own the stock realize that there's nothing there. And that's kind of what happened with marijuana. People have come to the realization there's nothing really there. And slowly, I bet you it's been a dozen years when California started, first decriminalizing it, then allowing medical use, and then allowing adult use. So it's a slow process.
I guess it's different in every state.
Yes. That's how, in fact, everything in the United States is like that.
Yeah.
Everything. Because we are not a federally run country. We are a bunch of states that collectively came to agreement to work together to, for the revolution and overthrow, you dirty Brits who were running, right?
I suspect a lot of Americans right now think I wish we could have them back. But we wouldn't have made you energy dependent. We wouldn't have had all kinds of riots in every bloody city going. But truth is,
that's America is a very libertarian country, probably the most libertarian country.
It is, and that's probably why there's a wide range of people who enjoy cannabis or marijuana or whatever you want to call it. But I'm not convinced there isn't research in terms of it being a gateway drug. And that's one of the, you say, I have to take drugs for being personal drugs for being a diabetic. To be honest with you, if the doctor says, take this one, I question it, but I end up taking it. And I hate it. I just hate having to take drugs, body's a temple and all that. I'm not a denier in terms of these jabs and everything, but the truth is, it is a little bit, it's too much for me to accept as a libertarian in one way. Mm-hmm. That you have to have it in your arm, whether you like it or not. I'm definitely against that. So, and hopefully that mandate in the States is going to be reversed because frankly, you don't need it. And for me, I think the marijuana's probably in the same boat, Pat. I don't know whether it is or not, but in effect, if you want cannabis to be sort of widely available and get off our case because it isn't a gateway drug, etc., all of that kind of stuff, and it's great for people who've got pain, then you shouldn't be arguing at the same time, or the government or some other people shouldn't be arguing for the same time of sticking effectively an untested drug in you to stop potential COVID variants. It doesn't seem to make squares. You're either libertarian and the body is a temple and I'll put whatever I damn well like in it, or I'm not having somebody else telling me what's going to go in. And I find it all quite challenging in this area. And I've never had it, and I probably never will. If I'm ill, then probably, if that was the solution, Pat, I would take it. But I
think a lot of people are where you're at, Graham. Yeah. I don't think you're an outlier here. What I've seen here in the States is that people who never really smoked marijuana or anything like that have bumped into a series of personal medical issues that they have not easily been fixed. Maybe I can share a story. My own wife has trigeminal neuralgia. There's a nerve that's in the face.
Yeah. And
it's actually it actually splits off of three different veins. And those nerves, one of them is encircled by a blood vessel, and it causes excruciating pain. And the mylar on the nerve is actually wearing off. Commonly, what's prescribed by pharmaceuticals is an epilepsy drug, and that has worked pretty well for her up until about 2 years ago, and it's not working anymore. and she's tried some other drugs that's not working very more, and it's been debilitating for her. But in researching a lot of these new CBD products, which she has been taking this one tincture, and it has made an immense change on her. And she's actually taking less of these pharmaceuticals.
Good.
The pharmaceutical industry, which contributes greatly to our political campaign, does not want this drug, does not want marijuana to exist in America, because what they found is cannabis works best when all of the cannabinoids, which are in the plant, are used and ingested and consumed all together. In studying cannabis, they found our body actually has a cannabinoid system that's used to balance the body and the usage of the body. And there are CCBN receptors that actually accept these cannabinoids and use to balance it all out. They have actually stopped. There has been legislation that's been that stopped research on this 3 decades ago. And they really haven't done any studies on this, because the pharmaceutical industry does not want this to happen.
No.
But I can speak personally that I have seen the effects of it with my wife and friends. So this is what I think is going to happen to address your statements, Graham, is that I think as you bump into people who start sharing more and more stories about, I was skeptical too, wasn't too sure, gave it a try, it's been awesome, and you start hearing these hero stories over and over again, you'll start opening up. If you dig into the science of it, there's a lot good going on with it, and since I've seen it personally, that's why I've gotten on the bandwagon.
I think it's the difference between hero stories and fearo stories. Forgive me for the English language. I think that's the difference between the COVID jabs and cannabis. I think and the use of cannabis. I think there's not many people out there who are heroizing, for want of a better term, the jab. Now, yes, it's helped us, etc., but it's not really a hero. We've now seen documents on the internet talking about 4 jabs. I don't know if you've seen that one, Kevin, in our country, where basically they've kind of got this form, and we haven't even had jab 3 yet. Never mind the 4th one. So
I came to the conclusion a long time ago that going forward, I think we're probably going to have another COVID jab every 6 to 12 months. And it's just each time it's going to
just be like the flu shot
bit for the latest variant. Flu shot, yeah.
It's good. It's going to be similar because this is just the way the world works. It's a creative world, and viruses mutate and change over time, and just like the flu virus does over time. This is just the way. This is the thing. I'm a stoic philosopher at heart. And I know the finality of our life is death. and I know things aren't going to work out for me in regards to this existence. So I do not live in a world of fear.
No.
I think I live in a world of being courageous and brave. Those are the virtues that the Stoics are all about. They're about wisdom. They're about courage. They're about kindness. That's where I'm at. I know there's a lot of people who are afraid that somehow they're going to lose what they've got or all that. I know we're going to lose. But today I'm not. Today, to quote Epictetus, I might die, but I don't think so today. Let's go do lunch. That's how I see the world. I'm a very positive person when it comes to that.
Well, as you might be able to see, but our audience won't necessarily see unless there's a clip of it. But basically, I've just come back from a funeral about 3 hours or so ago, and the lady in question was barely 6 months older than me. But beautiful, wonderful woman, and with a huge amount of talent. And she was a fellow trustee of a charity that we both served. But her life, unfortunately, has been cut short, and her family's a wonderful family. But the point is, it can come along, and 3 months in and out, so yes, life is so precious, and therefore we shouldn't really stand in the way of cannabis being more widely used. But there are risks with it.
There's risks with everything.
No, but if you get
alcohol's an even higher.
How many people get charged with being under the influence of cannabis whilst driving? It's DUI, isn't it? You call over there.
Yeah, there's very little of it actually. Because people mix up cannabis with alcohol. They're two really different things.
Yeah.
A lot of cannabis can actually allow you to focus better. I have friends who have a lot of anxiety, PTSD, things like that, and there are sativas that actually allow them to actually get more work done in the day. There's daytime. Like I have a friend of mine. She has a product called Spark Pure, and I actually brought these here. This one's called Spark My Day. This actually keeps you focused in the day. This one's called Spark by Night. This actually makes it easier for you to sleep at night. And of course, everybody is different, but alcohol is not like that at all. Alcohol is actually quite dangerous. Alcoholism is real, and it can be debilitating.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, cannabis wars don't get fought. People don't start fights in bars when smoking cannabis. They do with alcohol.
There are so many things in life that are fine in small quantities, but can become addictive and can become dangerous. Yeah.
It's that's certainly true of opiates, but not cannabis. Not
the biggest argument, I think, Pat, that you've got going for you is talk about other people's money, other people's health. So in effect, can cannabis actually help other people's health? And I think it for that, there shouldn't be an argument about that. If like with your wife, this great story about helping her, if that is, and there shouldn't be an argument, that should be just done. And the pharma companies clearly can't solve it in any other way. So basically, they don't have an argument, and they should not get in the way of it. But there isn't there a line that needs to be drawn? Because if you allow cannabis for that reason, you say, oh no, let's just be laissez-faire and let it out for anything. Just smoke it instead of going to the pub or whatever. I don't know whether that's going to cut. I'm staring at a thing on the screen here, Pat, that says that it is a gateway drug, and that it's more likely, between survey and survey, it's more likely that you'll end up with a serious alcohol problem if you had marijuana in the first place. If you were a marijuana user on survey 1, by the time they got around to survey 2 or survey 3, etc., you were more likely to be an alcohol abuser. I'm not sure where that goes on to other drugs, but certainly alcohol. So, as you were saying a few minutes ago, it was alcohol itself is a drug, and if you're an abuser of that, then all kinds of bad things can happen.
The thing is, being in sales for many, many years and studying persuasion and what that's all about, I've come to the realization that, and this is something I've always felt, is that people really make decisions on feelings, and they justify with rational thinking.
Oh, I've just done that. But having said that,
so you can go to the internet and find websites that say all kinds of crap, And in fact, commonly people would do when they make a mistake, when they make a decision. I saw this when I used to sell a lot of software, and you could tell when you get in a room, it was a B2B sale, and you have a lot of people in the room, and you're kind of like the ringmaster as the sales professional, and you're just trying to take the temperature of the room and trying to see where people are at. And you start realizing they're getting this feeling. about it. And then you'd pull out a fact. You'd say, oh, look at this. See, that justifies your feeling, right? And they pull out another fact. Well, see, that justifies your feeling. And that's how people bought. That's how people bought. And I think that's how people buy lots of stuff. And I think I'm only putting to you
something. The guy who's at the head of this organization, you'll know him quite well, because it's the NIH and it's Dr. Fauci, that evil man that you've got in charge of your health things in America. But basically, he's one who's credited with starting the China virus. But at the end of the day, it's the NIH, National Institute of Drug Abuse. All I'm saying is that isn't there a position that we have to take within civilization that says, well, this can be a bit difficult, but somewhere along the line, the states or the federal level have got to say, in your country, have got to say, no, we know it is. We'll cope, just like we're coping with alcohol. Well, maybe not coping with alcohol.
But Graham, I think what you've got here is an emerging, highly regulated industry. I don't think we're seeing something that's going to the stage that this is free to buy in very easy ways. I think
in other words, you can buy it anywhere, not free to buy.
It's it's moving glacially.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay.
It's my understanding from talking to people in the know that this could take 10 years before it's federally legal. So if we add it all up from the time it's federally legal, from the time it was completely illegal, we're talking 25 years. We're talking a generation.
Yeah. You'll still be podcasting, so don't worry about that. It's just a journey you go on.
Our friend Russell Thackeray, Graham.
Yeah.
Remember we had Russell on the podcast talking about his move into bricks and mortar in Southampton. Yeah. And one of the big things that Russell had done for that was to get himself authorized for cannabis-based products in that health service, in that health center, CBD. Yeah. And while that's legal, there are immense regulations around how it's made, how it's sold, how it's distributed. So I don't see this as being something that's suddenly going to go from totally illegal to totally open. It's going to be a regulated industry, which I think will make this very interesting for Pat, because I think all the time you're going to have problems and regulations and issues that are caused by the evolving regulated industry. And they're going to be incredibly interesting to talk about, to chat about, and to put materials out in the stratosphere for people to consume to help them through all of those problems. I think Pat is
this is like any business, right, Kevin? This is like, you want to be in an industry where there's challenges, where there's problems.
Exactly.
Because if there are no challenges and there are no problems, there's no opportunity as a business owner, right? Yeah. So I like going where there's problems. If you go someplace where it's easy, you're just selling commodities.
Yeah.
I do like what you're doing. I think you're the man who can actually open up an awful lot of this market in a weird way, because you'll have people, as you say, network and understand from each other how best to position themselves with regard to legislation, with regard to supply chains and retail and all that kind of stuff. And there's going to be a whole lot of interesting debates that you should have. And I think it's far better for you to be talking about it than you not to be talking about it.
Yeah. Pat, you're networking, you're chatting to people on your new podcast, and you say your goal is to matchmake. How does that turn into a business model? How are you planning to take that forward and monetize?
Commonly, what I do, if I bump into somebody who needs to meet somebody, I will ask them, if I was to introduce you to them, would that be valuable to you? And if they say yes, I would say, well, how valuable would it be? And they tell me, it's good. This is how valuable it would be to me. And I said, okay, if I did that, and if that worked out for them, when would I get paid for that? And they tell me, and I write it down. So here's a good example, right? There's a number of companies out there who who have private equity behind them, and they believe in the cannabis industry. They believe in it.
Yeah.
And if they look at a business plan and they really believe, they will give you a loan to grow, for capital expenses or whatnot. And if I bring them business, they'll pay me 2-3 points on whatever gets borrowed. Yeah, that's a good example.
Is it? I'm going to assume that it is a growing market, investing in cannabis.
Yes. Yes, I know a guy who's a venture capital guy, and he's only in cannabis. They've invested in growers, cultivators. They've invested in dispensaries. They're very interested in manufactured products. Right now, they're very interested in drinks, cannabis drinks, which are very, very, very interesting and a much safer alternative to alcohol. But of course, there's all kinds of cannabis products like tinctures and topicals and edibles. There's lots of
when you're starting to talk about tinctures and topicals, you're just clearly making it up. I've not a clue what you're on about. I mean, you've just made up those words. It's the next 100 days. It's not bloody Harry Potter.
Seriously,
series just the other day. I've actually been to where that what is that, King's Crossing? Is that where the
King's Cross? Yeah, platform 9 3/4.
I've been there. Tincture is they extract the plant down to the THC, which is the psychovariant part of the product,
right, into
an oil. And if you take the oil sublingually, your body can immediately process it very, very, very quickly.
Yeah.
Versus if it's an edible, it could take hours necessarily by the time your stomach processes it. So yeah.
Yeah, so you'd probably want to have one at breakfast if you've got a boring meeting later on in the late morning, then I suppose, would you?
But it depends on what you're looking for.
Well, I mean, Kevin's in accountancy, so I mean, if I had to go to one of his meetings, I'd probably take it up. But I can't imagine me sitting through an accountancy meeting.
We do the same thing with caffeine.
Yeah, it's true.
There's a few things that affect us like that way. So yeah, caffeine's like one of them.
Okay, so you can make money. I mean, what kind of level of return would the guy that's offering you 2 or 3 points on the loan? What kind of level of money would his investors get?
All depends. $50,000, $100,000, $500,000.
Yeah, all right. So you put in 100,000. What kind of return would you get from that 100,000 investment?
Well, if it's $1 million, get 3%. That'd be what? 30,000.
All right. Sorry. Okay. Sorry. I know that your share would be that, but basically, what would the investor get? So would he get 10% per annum, or would he get?
Oh, I'm not very.
No.
That I don't know, and I don't care.
No.
They charge high rates.
Got you. Okay.
There are people. Yeah. There are a lot of people, and this is the challenge that people in the industry face, is that because having a bank account is illegal. A lot of these people run the business purely on cash. And I mean cash. I mean like dollar bills.
Wow.
$10 bills and $20 bills. Buckets and buckets of these bills. And they got to store them someplace, and they're paying their utilities with cash. And there are companies out there who will, for a hefty profit, will take that cash and they will bank it for you. They will vet them they vet all their customers to prove that they're legal, that they're not doing money laundering or any of that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And then they can get an FDIC, a federally insured account for them, and they will hold it for you. And then it looks like you have a regular PayPal. It looks like you have a regular account, and then you can do e-commerce, like a PayPal or Square or something like that. And but it's hefty.
That must be extraordinarily difficult to operate without a bank account in an industry.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're dealing with cash. I mean, that's hard. I mean, you think about just running your own business and how many times you hit your bank account, etc.
You guys use QuickBooks? You ever use your clients use QuickBooks for business? Yeah,
all the time.
Yeah, if you start using hemp and cannabis in there, QuickBooks will shut you down. You can't use QuickBooks.
Wow.
Yeah,
I think people have been doing for decades.
Yeah. So, Pat, I'm getting the impression here, because of the nature of what's going on, that nearly all of the producers, manufacturers, distributors, whatever, are all pretty much small businesses. There's nobody big in this.
No. It's actually there's a lot of mom and pops that like to get into the business. But more or less, it's the MSOs, the multi-state operators, that are being successful.
Yeah.
So there are large companies that come into these states who can afford to outlay the capital, because these are big operations, and it's expensive, and the licenses are expensive, and the states have made it difficult for small people to get in, probably because the multi-state operators contribute to their campaigns.
Yeah,
would be my guess. And they're the ones who are there's a dozen companies that kind of run everything in this right now in the States.
If you look at the size of the market in US dollars, according to this research report, it's saying that this year it's worth $13.5 billion, which in Joe Biden's infrastructure bill terms, it's a drop in the ocean. But the point is, it's set to grow to 70.6 billion in 7 years. So in other words, they're going to put on give or take $60 billion in that market within the next 7 years. And so in other words, that 13 is going to probably times up by 4.5, 5.
That is one phenomenal growth rate.
So, in 7 years, you're looking at a 5-time multiple. So whether you're big or small, if you can pick the right players, it's almost like writing, it's just money.
You pick them all like an index stock, investing in them all.
Well, you'd probably want to have a pick in each, like you're saying, whether it's
like an index,
different sectors.
Place your bets, spread them out.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so that means that you've moved into a very positive space. This idea of actually pivoting from one place to another, does that, just going back to Sales Babble, will Sales Babble kind of continue but at a lower frequency, or will it more or less gracefully end, or will it stay at the same pace?
Yeah. I almost killed it this year. Because I was tired. I was tired of it.
Yeah.
I was tired of interviewing people and hearing the same answers over and over again.
Oh, God. We're not asking you the same questions as everybody else asks you, are we? I mean, because we usually get accused of asking really dumb but unique questions. So,
I mean, there's only so many times you can ask something, what's the biggest problem salespeople have? It's like, they don't listen. Really? Like, times.
Yep. Salesman like that, Pat.
Yeah.
You know what people need to do? They need to pick up the phone. I'm like, I know. Got tired of hearing.
I get that. So the answer is you're going to kill it then?
No. The answer is I didn't kill it. I actually decided to kill it. And then just as it came down, I came to this realization that I could pivot to something that's deeply important to me and something I've been wanting to do for a long time. So I decided to do that. And I started this month. Yeah, it was this November, right? I started it this month. I actually had a blog. I'm a philosopher, amateur philosopher at heart. Of course, all philosophers are amateurs, right? You don't make money being a philosopher. And I've been very interested in Taoism, which you would love, Graham. You would love it. Because Lao Tse, who wrote the Tao Te Ching, 2,500 years ago was fundamentally a libertarian.
Okay.
And he's Chinese guy. And he has a way of looking at the world that it's not about pushing. It's about kind of allowing things to be. A good example is he has the notion of water is soft. It flows through your hands. It's hard to pick up. But over time, it can cut through the hardest of rock. The same thing is true in selling. You could be pushy and not get a sale. But if you're soft and easy and tenacious and persistent, you can win deals given time. Taoism is filled with that kind of stuff. And about 8-9 years ago, I wrote a blog on this called The Tao Te Ching of Sales. And I wrote chapters kind of based off what Lao Tse wrote. And it was a lot of fun. When I started Sales Babble, I wanted to do something that was less academic and less ethereal. And that's how I got that podcast going. But the fundamental philosophy behind Sales Babble has always been the Tao Te Ching of sales. So I decided, instead of killing Sales Babble, what if I went back to those blogs, pulled those out, and actually wrote little vignette stories, putting into action exactly what I.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, Pat, but you're almost purifying it.
Yeah, niching it.
I don't know. There's a sense
in the selling space.
The sense that you're going back to its roots and actually saying, I don't want this clutter that gets me angry and makes me roll my eyes. So, as I said, you're purging that out of it. So I know that we had a guest recently from America, from San Francisco, David Garfinkel, who's known as the world's greatest copywriting coach. And he's fascinating. Now, David, one of the most popular series that he has is his Old Masters, where he goes back to, say, 100 years ago. And David, then relates it to, just relates actually what he's read in these books. And usually, quite often, copyright free, out of print, whatever. But what's really interesting is there's no new. When it comes to sales and stuff, you get a slightly different perspective, but we've heard it several times. And so it's when these, digi-savvy people who come along and they're inventing the world. Well, no, actually not, you lads. It started about 120 years ago, and so
5,000 years ago on the Silk Road, right? Two traders deciding, I'll give you a goat for, a bale of wheat.
Yeah. But the printed word about it was about that time. So what I'm really getting at is that I like the idea that you continue, but you shape it into something. Because Kevin will probably say, well, you know what, the next 100 days, we're going to have to become more checks and balances and, all that kind of stuff. And, he'll be wanting to do as more, I don't know, accounting or something like that weekend.
Nah, I don't know, but I think I'm taking away from what Pat's been telling us today, and we are the next 100 Days podcast, and I guess going on over the last 100 days in Pat's life has been the start of a new podcast, a whole load of networking in a new industry, the pivoting of Sales Babble itself back to its roots, and as Pat said, this is about getting bored with something, becoming repetitive, wanting to do something else. And I think, if that's where you are today, if you want to move on into something different, well, take a leaf out of Pat's book and just go for it.
Don't take long either.
Yep. The listeners, the audience to this should know that, we are creators. We are creative spirits. Yeah. We were born from this planet, just like the trees and the grass. We came from it. We were born from it, and we're an integrated part of it. And if we're not being creators, just like everything around us, that's where we become ill. That's where we become depressed and sad. We each I don't think I could
become depressed. I mean, if you force me to watch Newcastle United, maybe. maybe, even with their money, but otherwise, I'm going to be good.
You should tell your face that, Graham, because you've been smirking.
Great comeback. I love it.
Good one, Pat. Good one.
Yeah. No, you probably don't get the Newcastle United reference anyway, so it'll be wasted on you, Pat.
No, I'm catching it.
All right, so okay, but you've obviously, Kevin's pointed out the obvious. You've done an awful lot recently. What I'm interested in is the Pat Helmers in 5 years' time. Where are you then?
I don't know.
Where would you like to be?
I don't know.
He's a great podcast guest, Kevin. Where did you get him from?
Oh, I know. It's all that Jason.
He doesn't have an answer to anything. He does. I'm going
to be like about it. I'm like these leaves that I'm seeing blowing right now. They don't know where they're going to go, but they're going.
Yeah. True.
It's not about the destination. It's about the trip.
Okay, that's a fair point. But you've got 5 years. The kind of trip that you want to. Can you see yourself staying? And actually, the 5 years in the cannabis industry, it's going to be growing like topsy.
Yeah. I don't know. But I don't know. I'm going to go where it goes.
I really like that answer, Pat, because I think back and you can have plans and aspirations to do certain things, but you don't know what's around the corner. I didn't know the day I met Graham Arrowsmith that we were going to do 300 plus episodes of the next 100 Days podcast. I didn't know the first day I talked to a bloke called Dan Wells when I was sitting in a coffee shop just before the pandemic that 2 years later we were going to be running a 6-figure business together. Now, the things that tend to come along and you get involved with and you do, there tends to be very little planning goes into them.
That's my 2021 goals.
Yeah.
I'm not working on them.
No. Well, it's almost 2022.
Because some of them I got done, but some of them are irrelevant now.
Yeah.
But I will do a 2022 goals too, because I'm very goal oriented. I'm very disciplined. There's things I want to do. There are things I want to go, but I don't necessarily know where it's all going to take me. And that's the fun.
There's an honesty about that. There is an honesty, isn't there? So I guess that's true. But your journey has been really quite remarkable because of this pivot that you've made. Because if you took yourself back, I don't know, a couple of years, were you planning the pivot? Probably not.
This has happened to me a few times in my life.
Right. Okay.
Every time, and the audience may relate to this. I worked I was a software engineer. I actually have a couple patents, and I was a technical manager. And when the internet bubble burst early in the 20th century, in like 2001, 2002, I had to lay off all my people, and then I got laid off. Mm-hmm. And I thought I would retire there. And at age 55, I would ride off into the sunset. But instead, that created an opportunity for me to go work for a startup and to reinvent myself from an engineer into a sales guy and eventually become VP of sales and actually be in a completely different industry. And that was an amazing opportunity. Traveled all over the place, did a lot of great things. And then I got laid off there. I got fired there. But I had already started the podcast by then. And I said, you know what? I'm going to become a business consultant. I'm tired of working for people. And it's like, we literally, I know it sounds cliche, but one door closed and other doors opened. And
yeah, in my career, I've had 5 redundancies. So basically, a very wise man on the very first redundancy taught me the lesson that I've shared with other people is it is your job that is being made redundant, not you.
Yes.
So, and that's really important as a mindset to get, because people do, and you listen to them, they'll say, I've been made redundant. And I'm thinking, no, you haven't. Your job has. And that has implications for the way you live your life in the next few months. But at the end of the day, you are whatever you want to make yourself. And that's why I respect your answer early, even frustrating though it was, because effectively, who knows? But in your case, you do set goals. I'd back you to do whatever you wanted to do because, you're obviously a winner. You've won more times than you've lost, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
And that's really
I'm just
important.
here to help. I'm here to make the world a better place.
Yeah.
I'm literally here to help and to make the world a better place.
If you had to sort of recommend a book that was pivotal in your time in life, and you've talked about ancient philosophers and so forth, if you said to somebody, look, this guy, I really like the fact that he's reinvented himself, he's going into this cannabis market, whatever it is, what's that book going to be, Pat? Because you've got so much knowledge of sales. I mean, there's a lot of salespeople listening to this thinking, what's he going to say?
This is the thing. It depends on where the person's at, because I am pretty well read on this.
Yeah.
It depends where people are at. If they're well on the journey of mindfulness and understanding themselves, I might send them to Marcus Aurelius. I might send them to Lao Tse. But if they're starting their baby steps on something, I might send them to Andrew Carnegie, or I might send them to there's a guy I really like, Eisenganger. He's a Dutch guy. He's got a book on Stoicism, which is pretty straightforward. Mark Manson's book, what's it called? Don't Give an F About Life, or something like that, or something. He's got I can't remember the title of the book.
We'll find it and put it in the show notes.
Yeah, but it's a very practical book on don't get caught up in what other people think. Understand who you are, what's important, and focus on that.
You must be a great coach to those people that you coach.
I like to think so.
Is that what they'd say, or they say?
They do say that. You go to my LinkedIn and you'll find all kinds of recommendations that say stuff like that. You know,
they do. No, we have done a modicum of research. We're famed for our lack of research, but the truth is, Pat, you've been an absolutely brilliant guest on the Next 100 Days podcast. Thank you.
Well, Graham, you've been a brilliant host, and Kevin too.
Thank you, Pat. So, Graham, are you going to take your back garden and turn it over to cannabis growing?
No, I'm not. It's interesting that when you start looking at the market development opportunity that there is in that industry, it just in America, it's going to be huge. It is,
and the fact that there's so much grey around legal and illegal. So much regulation that's there already will emerge over time. There are constantly going to be new problems to solve. And Pat is, by the very nature of his being, a problem solver. He's in a great place.
I think he is. He'll have a platform, and his style and his gravitas, shall we say, will enable him to forge bonds within that industry, which makes him indispensable to people. So, and he's done this in rapid fire time, presumably triggered a little bit by the experience of his wife and so forth. But
he's taken 100 days or thereabouts, and he has reinvented himself.
So it's been an interesting, challenging at times conversation, because I get a bit worried about, taking something that potentially could damage people. But what I like about it is it's got so many redeeming characteristics. We just have to figure out a way in which it's going to scare people less, and allow people to do more with it.
At one point in your career, you smoked cigarettes and you sold them to retailers.
I did,
I think there's a lot more harmful about the average cigarette than there is about these cannabis-based products.
That might be the case, but the cigarettes were and are legal. It's just they at the moment cannabis is not. I don't think anybody would get thrown into a pit if they were caught with their own sort of enough for themselves, sort of thing. They just wouldn't. But at the moment, it hasn't got a pass. And so I think this podcast is something we probably wouldn't have done, but we've done it because Pat was and is a brilliant podcaster who's, if you haven't listened to the Sales Babble podcast, then do, because he's good. He has some great guests. So today it's been a brilliant chat with our friend Pat Helmers. Today I've been Graham Arrowsmith.
I've been Kevin Appleby. Goodbye.
Goodbye.